I want to, again, thank you guys all for coming. And for those of you who don't know me, my name is Ted Rasmussen. I'm our recently elected county treasurer. I want to say that in my year and 2 months on the job, Lucy has been an amazing person to work with. We work together pretty much every day, and having her in the county is just such a blessing for everybody in that building. She does an amazing job. She leads her staff, and I like to make a joke when I talk to people about the county offices. They created the supervisors and said, okay, you guys decide where the money's spent. They created the treasurer and said, okay, you hold on to the money. They created the sheriff, said enforce the law. The recorder, write everything down. And they said, the attorney, you'll do the prosecution. They said, well, we got a lot of crap left to do, but we don't have enough offices to do it. So we're just going to create the auditor and make them do everything. And that really is true. Tax certification, they are the keeper of keys, the Board of Supervisors clerk, in charge of elections, in charge of drainage districts, a very important issue in Iowa. If there's something to be done, the auditor's office has to do it, and Lucy does an amazing job making sure that that gets done. So I asked Lucy to send me her accomplishments, and the list was pretty big. So I said, narrow it down to the last 4 years since you last got elected. And she came up with some amazing things that they've done. They've digitized all of our property records. They upgraded to a more secure e-poll boards, very important with our elections. She served as the chair of our statewide election administration training, which job is to certify other auditors and staff in order to be able to put on elections. And here's an important one. She worked with ISU to make student IDs acceptable for election purposes. And then another very important one, she partners well with the League of Women Voters to really reach out and expand voter registration and those satellite voting stations on the ISU campus. So with a lot of the jobs in the county, it's more about getting the work done, being an administrator, and like I said, Lucy does an absolute amazing job doing that. There are a few things, though, where it does matter that she's a Democrat and not a Republican. The first thing is something that doesn't seem to come up often, but the last few times it did, we ended up with our only Republican supervisors. And that is if someone leaves the board before their term is up, the vacancy committee is made up of the auditor, the treasurer, and the recorder. And we all know that our great friend, Rick Sanders, left the board this year. And Lucy helped me, I guess we helped each other make history when we created through an appointment, the first all-female board of supervisors in the history of Iowa. And I don't think either of us knew that going in. We just looked for the best candidate possible, and without a doubt, Lisa Heddens filled the bill. So. The other thing that Lucy does that I don't think we could count on a Republican to do, and this matters to everybody in this room and it especially matters to candidates, is the auditor is in charge of setting up satellite voting locations and setting up voting in general and running the elections. In 2018, I want to thank Lucy immensely because I think it definitely helped get me elected, that she made it as easy as possible for the people of Story County to vote. It didn't just make waves here in Story County when we voted for JD Scholten 67-33 over Steve King. It made waves across the state where they said, oh, well, those ISU students, they're the ones who got you Democrats elected in Story County. I heard that multiple times in my first year in office. Well, ISU students live here. They should be allowed to vote here. Lucy makes sure that they get the chance to do that. So I want to thank you, Lucy, for your great work in that. And then, because it is a Democratic fundraiser, Lucy's not going to get off this year without an opponent. Like I said, the Republicans know that the more voters we get, the worse they do. They will come up with every trick to keep people from voting. And if we didn't have a great Democrat auditor in that office, there's a good chance that all these great voting opportunities wouldn't be there in the next cycle. So there's a basket out front. Lucy accepts cash, she accepts checks. Please help her get her campaign started off right with a big donation tonight. And without any further ado, our Story County Auditor, Lucy Martin.
We didn't mean to dress the same, but we kind of did. Which that was pretty funny. We didn't get to call JD and have him do that. So, thank you, Ted, for those very kind remarks. Thank you all for being here tonight. Especially thank Jane and Pat Hansen for hosting me. They've been amazing next door neighbors. But I also think it's interesting that JD Scholten, who's our special guest tonight, was born at Mary Greeley Hospital. And Jane is recently retired as an OB nurse at Mary Greeley Hospital. So, I don't think she delivered JD. She's a little young for that, but I thought that was pretty sweet. So first of all, I'm asking everybody for your vote on June 2nd in the primary election. So don't forget, you can request an absentee ballot right now. So I really hope I don't pick up a primary challenger. That doesn't seem to be in the cards, but it's always important that we go out. The primary election, generally in Story County, we get single-digit turnout for those. Some of that's due to the fact that the students are not here and they're part of our numbers, and some of that's just due to the fact that a lot of people don't seem to think that primaries are important, but they are, because that's what fills the slate for the November election. So I would just like to thank everybody also for sending me my colleagues that I have now in the administration building over in Nevada. People always say, oh, you're just a county official, it's not really party oriented, it doesn't really matter who's in there. But let me tell you, it really matters who is in there. And it's really been such the last couple of years where I've had Linda to work with and I've had Ted to work with. It's just such a much more positive feeling in the building. And they talk to me about things like water quality and legislative issues, and not like who the rich guy on the road gave me a big check to, or how can I get this CAFO passed before my term is over, or things like that. So it is really important. It's very important. Everybody gets really excited, especially in the presidential election year, to vote for the top of the ticket. But it's important to vote for our congressional candidates, it's important to vote for our county candidates, our state legislators, and also to turn that ballot over and vote for those judges that are on the back. That's probably where I see the most amount of undervoting. So I, of course, as the Commissioner of Elections, think everybody should vote all the time. And why isn't everybody talking about this all the time? Because I'm paid to do that. So, but if you have any questions about anything on the ballot, you should always ask me, ask your county auditor. But it is really important that we elect good Democrats. I think too, as Democrats, we send the best people to do the job. Take Ted, for instance. Ted is interested in how we are investing the county's funds. He's not a paranoid conspiracy theorist. Sleeps in his car half the day. He's not somebody who, sorry, but he's not somebody who will let people think that he's a CPA and never correct that assumption, which is not necessarily a lie, but it's not correcting a false assumption. So to not have to work with somebody like that anymore is really, makes me much happier to get up every morning and drive those 10 miles to Nevada and do the job every day. So, and Ted and Linda are also, I'm really happy that they're both my colleagues at the county, but also that they ran for races that were not safe, that were not open, that were not easy to win. And they went out there and they did the work and they beat incumbents and they beat them by really nice margins. And that's what JD is going to do this year. That's why I'm really happy that he's joining us here tonight, because he's going out there and he's not taking the easy route. He went out there in 2018. He did town halls in all of the 39 counties that are in the district. It's the biggest geographic district in the state of Iowa. The registration advantage is not great for Ds, but that was not daunting to him. He went out there and he did the work. And I saw that Linda went out there and did the work to be county supervisor. Ted went out there and did the work to be county treasurer. And it works. If you go out there and you do the work and you bring your best people, we can absolutely do this. But it's also important that we send, when JD goes to Congress, that he has a Democratic Senate to work with as well. So we need to get Joni Ernst out of there. We're all working together to make this happen, so that people like Herman and Beth and Ross are not always on the defensive trying to just keep back this tide of terrible legislation, that we're actually moving forward as a state, as a county, as a nation together. And that's the one thing that's most distressing to me about the opposition, is they don't think that they work for everybody once they get elected to office. Democrats work for everybody, and I see that in all of my colleagues at the county. I see that in everybody that runs for office. They understand that once they get elected, they represent everybody, and they want everybody to succeed, and they want this country to move forward and live the best lives that we all can live. So I just hope that I'm part of that. I'm wearing my shirt. It's called Blue Wave. It looks more like Wi-Fi signals to me. I got this after Linda and Ted won 2 years ago. So I was like, oh, I have to get this shirt. And I wore it to Linda Merkin's victory party. So, anyway, with that, I would like JD Scholten to come up and give us his remarks. Thank you.
All right. Well, first I have to say thank you to so many people, a lot of familiar faces here in this room. If I haven't seen you since last election, there's so much energy and passion in this district my name was on the ballot, but it was such a team effort, my staff and all the volunteers and everything, and so I'm extremely grateful for that. I will say, I was born here, and actually my birthday is on Wednesday, and my mom reminded me this morning that 40 years ago today I was due, but like most everything else in my life, I was late.
I still haven't met your mom.
Oh, she's...
Look out. Huh?
I'll say that they moved to Minnesota. Well, here's a story of... I'll talk a little bit about how I came about, because when I looking at Lucy and looking at a lot of different things, the importance of why I decided to come back to Iowa. And so 2016, that election, I know it was a gut punch to a lot of people here. And for me, it was no different. I happened to be living in Seattle at the time, and my inspiration in my life is my mom's mom, my grandma. I was blessed to play minor league baseball, but in the off seasons, she always took me in for whether it was a month, 3 months, whatever. And my quintessential Grandma Fern story was I got a job working at just some coffee shop, and I'd open some mornings at 5 a.m. She would have breakfast on the table at 4:30. And this is I moved in to take care of her because she had a surgery. And so that's the type of woman she was. And so when 2016 happened, I wanted to get more active, but I didn't know what that meant. And I went to see her at Thanksgiving, so a couple weeks after the election, and she had an idea that I should move back and take care of her, work at the nursing home she was in. I was like, Grandma, that's a great idea, but I don't have a degree in healthcare. They're not going to hire me. And she goes, oh, you're probably right. But she said something on the last day before I had to fly back, and she goes, JD, you need to move back to Iowa and take care of the farm. And that hit home because she passed away less than a month later. And at that rural church where she was an active member most of her life, that's where I felt that pull to come back home. And I still didn't know what I wanted to do. A month after that was the inauguration, and the very next day I'm in Seattle and I go to the Women's March. And just the most raw power and energy I ever witnessed in my life. And that's when I said, you know what? I don't know what I'm going to do, but I'm moving back home. I'm going to fight. And so I called my parents up, and this is where my mom comes into play. I called them up and I go, I have news for you. And they go, we have news too. And they told me to go first, so I go, I'm moving home. And there was this long pause. And they go, we're moving to Minnesota. And so my parents are retired now, and so they want to be full-time grandparents. And so they decided to be up in the cities because my sister has twins up there, and they want to be full-time grandparents. And so they're up there doing that. And I like to joke that my dad, we lost one vote, and my dad and my mom's a wild card. Just kidding. She's one of the strongest feminists I ever know, and I wouldn't be here today running for office if it wasn't for her. And so I tease her a lot. But yeah, so. But I'll just talk a little bit about our campaign, and then I'd love to open up for a few questions if anybody have anything. But I know we just got off the caucuses, and that was pretty exhausting, having all that attention on us, all the weight of democracy on us. But I will say that this is something that's not getting talked about, but this is what happened in the 4th District. We have over 10,000 new registered voters in the 4th District. That's not counting the Republicans or independents who caucused for Democrats as well. And so that's even more people. But I'm so proud of my home county, Woodbury County. And you have to realize, we've been, especially Sioux City, it's been an immigrant meatpacking town since the 1880s. And we moved there in 1984 from Nevada. We moved there in 84 when I was just 4 years old. And it was the same size as Sioux Falls. And Sioux Falls I think it's over 200,000 people at this time, and we're still 82,000 people in Sioux City, the same as 84. And we have this, we have this blue collar thing about us, but for whatever reason, there's always been more Republicans, but for the first time in a long, long time, now with this new updated voter registration, we're finally a blue county. And so much of what I moved back for was to help build and to shape the Iowa that we all know and we all love and we want to all improve upon. And so last cycle, Woodbury County has never voted against King, and we got 54%. So what we're doing now is just, my campaign's on a building phase. We just wrapped up our 39 county tour, going into towns of under 1,000 people, calling the Don't Forget About Us tour, and really trying to connect with a lot of folks. And in doing so, we learn a lot of things that don't make the papers. And there's a dozen towns, at least in this district, that are struggling just to keep their grocery store alive. And everywhere you go, healthcare is the #1 issue. And folks talk about the tariffs. That's absolutely making things harder for a lot of different people, especially in rural America. But I mean, the renewable fuel standard being abused by this administration, the market consolidation, and the amount of agriculture monopolies that are dictating the inputs, dictating the markets, and dictating how farmers are farming. And so all these things we pick up on the trail and hear these stories, and that's what allows us to grow and grow and grow. And so the next phase, so we presume that we don't have a primary opponent. A week from Friday will be the last day for petitioning and handing the files in. And so from here until primary day, we'll let the other side beat each other up, and we're just going to continue to build and be ready regardless of who it is. I will answer, I know this is probably on a lot of people's mind about the Republican side. Our campaign, and a lot of what we tried to do last time was it's the same mentality of when I pitched. I didn't care who the batter was. I didn't care who the team was. I'm going to pitch to my strengths. And our strengths in this campaign is talking about what we're for and just not what we're against. So it doesn't matter who the actual nominee is. I will say, though, that I have a tough time thinking it's going to be anybody other than King. What we realized in fundraising and in having a field program, it's extremely hard to organize this district, all 39 counties. And so, I mean, we'll be prepared for whoever it's going to be, but at the same time, these people have voted for King time and time again. How do they all of a sudden just change?
Half of them are related to him, right?
But I mean, with little to no effort the last 2 years, he's had a primary and he's gotten 30,000 votes with no effort. Now he's actually putting effort in. So I don't think he wins it easily by any means. I think he'll get under 50%, but I still think he'll get it. But that's just my guess. So, yeah.
If you were elected, what would be your highest legislative priority?
I mean, healthcare is the number one thing. I say that, but ultimately, if we don't get money out of politics, we don't get a lot of what we're trying to fight for. And so, ending Citizens United and voter registration and making sure the will of the people, that's the fight. And that's why, like, I'm selfishly here today, even though we're here for Lucy. I'm here because I need the student IDs, I need the voter registrations, and people like Lucy helped us out and helped me out. And so, as much as I like to say that I'm here for her, I'm here for myself too. I'm just kidding.
Pat Gallen from Woodbury County Auditor is great.
Yeah,
He's a Democrat as well.
Yep, and they've had some news that relate to the 4th District and county supervisors and stuff recently too. So it's very important to have a good county auditor, I'll say that. So, does anybody have any? Yes, hey Linda.
JD, hi. I just want to thank you so much for going to all the small towns you're going to. And those are kind of sometimes hard places to go to.
Yep.
But I think what Ted and I saw in 2018 and you saw in 2018 is there may be places we're not going to win.
Yeah.
But what we have to say is we can do better there.
Yep.
And every vote in those small towns, in those precincts where we think we may not win, but we can do better, we can pull more votes in, is very important. And I'm saying that for everybody else who's running around here. Don't slight the rural areas, don't slight the small towns. You may not win them, but you can do better than you might otherwise do, and putting all those numbers together is how we win. So thank you for doing that.
It's my pleasure. But I will say, I learned a lesson very early on last cycle, is when you show up at these towns, especially when you get an RV with your name on it, people know, and they talk. And almost every gas station, I take the opportunity to talk with somebody, to talk to the cashier, to talk whoever is there. I mean, they know who I am with that thing out there, with the Sioux City Sioux out there. But I will never forget stopping in at a bar on the road one night, and there was a woman came in, and she sat next to us, and she was talking, and she's like, "Oh, are you the guy running?" I'm like, "Yeah." And so we start talking, and everything she said, probably I don't agree with. But at the end of the day, she goes, "You know what? You seem like a decent guy. I'm going to vote for you." I mean, showing up, it's not rocket scientists. If you put in the work, you continue to show up. I mean, at the start of last cycle, there were 70,000 more registered Republicans than Democrats in this district. That's not encouraging. But what we thought of, if you get out there to the people, prove you're trustworthy, and prove that you're going to fight for your constituents, you're going to earn votes. And we got over 25,000 more votes last cycle than there are registered Democrats in this district. Yeah, and yeah. And I'll say the amount of Republicans, especially in my neck of the woods, who came up to me and said, "We're glad you're running again." It just goes to show there's a lot of people who are willing to listen. So.
What's your staffing like now?
Our staffing, so we have we have 4 people on staff right now.
Full-time?
Full-time.
and
Full-time plus.
yeah, full-time plus. We will grow by 1 or 2 in the next month or so, and then we'll really grow in June. So,
Are you going to be able to have an office in Ames anytime soon?
so that's one thing we're going to be working with the party
Okay.
on that. We're probably going to be opening up an office in Sioux City next week, and then have like a big office party then. And then we're still trying to talk with all the counties, but we'll definitely have a presence here. The one big difference I think last cycle to this cycle is because of the primary last time we had to be here so much.
Yeah.
Now I'm trying to get everywhere else
Right.
and then come back here when
You don't have
things
to
get revved
do
up.
6,000 candidate forums, Paul Dahl and John Passion and Leanne.
It made me better though, I will say
Oh,
that.
it absolutely does. I think primaries are very much unappreciated in the
Yeah.
party.
Yeah.
When people say, "Oh, damn it, I got a primary."
Yeah.
Well, it makes you a better candidate.
Absolutely.
And you learn to be humble. You learn
Unless you're
that
Steve
you
King.
can't, well, yeah, true. But you learn you can't assume that you're going to always win.
Right.
So JD, you made it to Story County about a month ago to Maxwell.
Yeah.
The metropolis of Maxwell. Thank you for coming. Like Linda said, to all these small towns. When you hit all the small towns around the state, other than healthcare, what is it that's really on Iowans' minds? What are you hearing from the people?
You know, it's getting harder and harder to live in rural America. And there's an article I read, I believe it is in the New York Times a month ago, or no, it's a couple months ago by this time, called What Happened, or Who Killed the Naps? Did anybody read this? It was a story about Oregon, in rural Oregon.
Yes.
Yeah, and it's about I think it was 5 kids. There was a family. Dad worked, I think, a union job. Mom stayed at home, had 5 kids. They had a nice lifestyle growing up, but now, like, of the 5 kids, 4 or 3 have died. 1 had alcoholism, opioids. And that's the thing. I talked with a couple of the presidential candidates about this. I'm like, that's the pain in America right now that nobody's talking about. And we have somebody very close to the campaign who's going through mental illness in rural areas. And I've tried to contact the local areas, the facilities, to say, hey, can you see our friend? And they said it's a 2 months waiting list. And you see, like, you hear some of the presidential people talk about this. These are diseases of despair. Alcoholism, and that's what we see when there's low wages and there's the $10, $12 an hour jobs. We have thousands of those, but we need $60, $70, $80,000 jobs. And so I'm actually, we're not, we haven't announced anything yet, but we're going to be working on a rural revitalization tour with Congressman Ro Khanna. Because he's going to talk about technology and bringing technology to rural areas, and we're going to talk about what it can do to transform agriculture in these small communities. And so that's what we're seeing, and there's an economic pain out there, and that's what we're seeing. Yeah.
I think one of the largest issues that maybe you're finding is active.
Yeah.
You know, I think that's why I was really excited to hear you running again, because, right, you're not giving up. And I think a lot of our constituents they feel stuck.
Yeah.
Right? In a world that's overly racist, overly, I can't get my health care fixed, I can't get, so thank you, number one, on behalf of all of us for not giving up. So that's really what I'm excited about. So
Well, thank you. I will say that when we first went around we did about 39 county tours last cycle. The first time we went, even the Democrats in some of these other areas, you just see the pain because if they talk out, it's almost being bullied in some of these areas. And what was so amazing for me to see is that third time we went out there, you saw that hope in their eyes. And you saw the same people who were a little bit ashamed to say they were a Democrat putting yard signs in. And that to me, going into a small town that I hadn't been into in years and seeing our yard sign in there, so that shows our field team was ahead of us and all this, at the end of the day, running for office is not easy. And when you see that, it rejuvenates you. And so,
Those yard signs were out on gravel roads too.
absolutely.
All over. When we did Rag Ride, we had JD signs everywhere.
Absolutely. And Ragbri, half of Ragbri is going to be in the 4th district this next year. So yeah. Any other questions? Yeah.
How are you addressing the farmers with the agriculture right now? And they were given a socialism, stigma, and Trump got away with it,
Yeah. So there's three things. The three things I mentioned before. The abuse of the renewable fuel standard. What we saw there was this administration picking the oil industry and the oil subsidies and all that over our farmers. And the biggest thing that I want folks to know is the importance of ethanol is I've met with the California Air Resource Board, and they dictate where we're going as a nation more than anything out in DC, because what they decide, the industry follows. And what the head of CARB said was, if we plan to get to carbon neutral or decarbonize as a nation, renewable fuels are a huge part of that. And so it may not be the ethanol that is now, but it could be the next generation or generation after that. And so that's why it's important. So letting those folks know, saying, listen, I feel your pain right now and what's happening. I want to continue evolving where we're going with this. And they want to hear that. The second part of it is the tariffs. What we're seeing right now, farmers are going to their bankers right now. And we've had 6 consecutive years of low commodity prices. 30% of farm income last year was from the farm bailouts.
That's aggregate farm income. A lot of people didn't get anything.
Right. Well, and that's a huge part of it is who got these bailouts. I know 126 million went down to JBS down in Brazil. Well, like the farmers who actually need it, the struggling farmers who are struggling to stay on the land, they got, I think on average, about $5,000.
A lot of them got $25.
Yeah, and a lot got $25. And so there's a woman in the heart of Monona County in Ute. We did a town hall there, and this woman I started talking about agriculture. She just started sobbing. She goes, my son just graduated from Iowa State. All he wants to do is take over the family farm, and I don't have the guts to tell him no. And to hear those stories. And I have a family friend who lives on the very eastern side of Woodbury County, Century Farm. And the dad retired last year and said, son, I'm not passing the farm on to you. We're renting it out after 100 years. And just hearing these stories. But a lot of it comes down to this, that I push every presidential candidate on this because I don't only think it's the right thing, it's also politically the right thing. And the thing is, Chuck Grassley talks about this all the time, but doesn't do a darn thing about it. It's enforcing our antitrust laws. And that is what we're seeing right now. It's the second Gilded Age. And we are more concentrated now than when Upton Sinclair wrote The Jungle. And next year, which I hope to be my first year in Congress, will be the 100-year anniversary of the Stockyards and Packers Act. And Mother Jones just wrote an article about me, or about the race, and they reference that I'm the only candidate in America probably talking about the Stockyards and Packers Act, and I'm pretty darn proud of that.
Follow-up question.
Yeah.
Are Ben and Jerry going to bring your flavor back?
That's a very important question.
It's a very important question.
They didn't bring it in. Yeah, I did take a lot of heat of that from the Lamar's area.
Nobody can come up with a flavor for you.
Exactly. And I will say with Blue Bunny, they did not give King money last cycle.
Really?
So,
Yay.
yeah.
Good.
So
we're saying we should petition Blue Bunny?
Good.
I think, start it.
If everybody wants to do a really fun road trip in December, go to the Holiday Lights Parade in Lamar's.
Yeah.
It is fun. It is fun.
As long as the weather's not too bad.
You need a lot of Steve King's cousins, but it's fun.
So, well, any last question? Yes.
I have the most important question.
Okay.
Will your RV last until November?
So, as we speak, it's in storage. So the RV, the question was, will the RV last? We have an exhaust issue right now. We have the money that they said it would cost to get fixed. We have that right now, but we found out there's another issue, and so and then we have to get it rewrapped. But it will be on the road before too long.
Maybe you could buy John, what's his name's vehicle?
Oh, John Delaney's? No, I want a Winnebago.
I'm sorry
Oh,
for
no.
asking questions. What are your hopes for being able to debate Steve King this time around? Has he said anything, or have you?
Well, I mean, you look at what he's done as a result of the election, going to town halls everywhere, which, to be honest, the more time he speaks, the more time he puts his foot in his mouth, the more time we can fundraise off him. You look at a lot of things and that he's actually having to do. And one of the things he has to do is in his primary, they've signed up to do a debate. And it's going to be within 6 weeks of the primary. And so if they debate in the primary, if they debate in the primary and they don't debate in the general, that looks pretty sour on them. So I fully anticipate debating whoever the nominee will be. So, last question.
Check should be made out to Scholten for.
I'll be back. We'll have a fundraiser.
Chance.
Today's about you. And so
But there was some debate about whether it's Scholten for Congress or Scholten for Iowa.
you know what? The checks work either way.
Okay.
But it is officially Scholten for Iowa.
Okay.
But again, I just want to say I'll stick around for a little bit. I got to get to Omaha because I got an early morning flight. But I just want to say thank you so much for everyone who came here. This is so important to help out people like Lucy, because ultimately I'm going to be selfish again because they'll help out me. So with that, I want to say my name's JD Scholten and I continue to stand tall for all.